And today in Endgame Exclam, we're going to talk about endgames in World Championships that could have or did change the way we know the world now. So let's start with this one between Bronstein and Botvinnik. Now, Bronstein won the previous game, the 5th game against Botvinnik, and was white. And as we can see, white is about to grab some pawns, and Bronstein does take the first pawn on h5. h5, rook takes h4, knight takes f6, and now he's an extra pawn up. But Botvinnik finds a very, very good plan here, which will give him enough counterplay. Any ideas how black can conjure up some play in this fairly solid position? Now, even though black is material down, he has very good pieces. He has an amazing bishop on c6 hitting on both the a and e4 pawn. Also, rook is tying this rook to d4. So black only needs to mobilize one more piece to be close to balancing out the position.
King to b6?
King b6. You play like Botvinnik. Good job. King b6, rook takes d6. How can we follow up?
King to c5.
Yes, marching with the black king. e5. And now Bronstein finds this really nice move, rook d4. He realizes that his bishop will be much, much stronger than this knight that's just stranded on f6. Rook d4, exchange is forced, knight g4, bishop takes a4. And now this bishop takes a4 was a reckless move because white passed pawns on e5 and f5 can be very dangerous. How can Bronstein mobilize these pieces, these pawns? How can white mobilize these pawns?
e6.
e6, yes, correct. F takes e6.
F takes e6.
F takes e6. No, Bronstein didn't take on e6 because that. Yes,
Because
yes.
Because the black pawn is preventing.
Yes, he is preventing the black bishop to actually defend these squares. So he has to play bishop e8, knight 8, king b3, e5, check, and now knight h6. King f4, f7, bishop takes f7, knight f7, e4. Now let's take stock. Well, Botvinnik is a piece down, which is not a great news for him, but he has a very, very active e-pawn. But Bronstein finds a very good resource in this position, which will actually be a saving move for white. Yes? King c2. If the king comes, then black will also bring his own king, and most probably will have some problems. Also, the a-pawn might start running as well. So Bronstein decided to defend against this e-pawn with his knight. How did he do that?
Knight to d6.
If you bring your knight to d6, then there's pawn e3,
Do I not get there in time? Did I miscalculate?
and you don't get there in time because even if you take e2, knight c5. So instead, he played the paradoxical knight d8 because he wants to head to d4.
He gets to d4, he cut away.
Yeah. So if you would have done knight d6, e3 takes knight c5, and unfortunately, black will not queen, which would run into knight d3 check, but he'll just play king e3 and white is just dead lost. So he plays the paradoxical knight d8 because after e3 there's this knight e6 check. So Botvinnik here thought and played e3 anyways. But now there's two options for white. And now the tragedy occurs. Because Bronstein most likely saw that knight e6 is possible, but was wondering if king c2 would work. Which one should we play?
The knight check, right?
The knight check. Yes, I believe this was Bronstein's original idea. And after king f3, knight d4, here king a4, e2 takes. This will end in a draw because king b6 takes and draw. And which would have been an okay result for Bronstein because he's a game up. He won the previous game. But he started pondering and thinking, what if I bring my king to c2? And now it's black to move and win. Tragically for white.
E2?
If e2, then king d2.
Did I just bring my king down, right?
Yeah, but then I'll stop you with
Just
king
take
e1.
and stop.
Yeah. I'll just come back with the knight and stop the a pawn. Now if black king can reach the f2 square, white is done for. If he goes king f3, then knight e6. And if e2, then knight d4. Problem with king f3 is that the knight comes with check.
Oh, you run the a knight, the a pawn.
No?
No? No!
No. So black is trying to promote the e pawn. Black is trying to promote the e pawn without getting into checks, which is not as easy as it looks, but Botvinnik finds the way. King g3, exactly. Gets away from the checks, and if knight e6,
f2.
no.
No?
If king f2, then the knight just jumps to d4. Just push the pawn. e2, king d2, and king f2.
Now then.
And sadly for Bronstein, he missed this idea of e2 pawn push first, and now after king g3, he just decided to resign. But Bronstein got another chance to win the game. No, not this one. And he was leading and up a point in game 22, where he was already leading again with a full point. It's the same match.
So
And
giving up the win, he came back and still was
he came back again, and he was already in the lead by this game, by this point. So he won game 22, and Bronstein was already leading Botvinnik with 1 point. So Botvinnik had to win this game, which is kind of tough because the position looks pretty close, at least to me. So white started a nice knight maneuver with knight e2, queen b6, bishop c3, rook d8, and now white came up with a brilliant queen move in this position. That is standard in these days, but it wasn't standard in the 50s. White is basically forcing an endgame. Queen b3. Now the idea is, even though black could take, a takes, this would open up the position a little. And eventually black plays a6, rook fc1, let's say knight d7, and after bishop f1, white will have two plans. One of them would be bishop f8, knight d3 to play b4 and knight c5. Or, if let's say black just waits, white can start pushing the pawn and play b4 and b5, opening up the position and getting a stable advantage. And now here black will have to suffer a little for the draw. So obviously Bronstein would be happy with a draw, so he doesn't want anything to happen. Knight e4, queen takes b6, and bishop e1. A very, very weird move, but Botvinnik, and this was actually one of the big themes of this match, he was always kind of banking on the strength of the bishop pair, while Bronstein was using the knights to have some counterplay. But this time, Botvinnik will be the one getting on top. So knight a5, knight d3, defending everything first. He'll use the bishop pair later. Bishop f8. How can Botvinnik try to untangle in this position? Now, white really doesn't have too much space, so he will need to kick the knights. Yes, f3, exactly. Getting rid of this nasty knight on e4, while also getting a little bit of breathing space for the pieces. Knight d6, bishop f2, bishop h6, rook c1, knight c4, rook e1. So Botvinnik first and foremost just tries to coordinate his pieces first and do action later. Knight a5, king f1, bishop g7, g4, just taking away the f5 square. Knight c6, b3. What is b3 doing?
Keeping the knight out.
Yeah, just keeping the knights out, and also maybe hinting on some ideas of knight b2, a4, trying to getting closer to that b6 pawn. Knight b5, but Bronstein knows what to do, and he's trying to muddy waters, and also pointing out that he would like to plant a knight on c3 if possible. So king e2, a4, chasing away the knight so there won't be knight b4 ideas. Knight c7, bishop g3. And now, out of the sudden, that very passive bishop that started from e1 moves to g3 and puts a lot of pressure on black's position. Already, white is slightly better in this position. Knight a6, bishop f1, f6. What's the idea of f6? It's also a very good move.
Keep the knight out from being traded.
Yeah, and also getting a firm grip on the e5 square, apart from avoiding exchanges on e5. Rook d1, knight a5, rook takes c8, rook takes c8. And now Botvinnik comes up with an idea that is very unique. And computers don't really agree with him, but I think Botvinnik was right when he executed this idea. He actually will make a pseudo pawn sacrifice. The next move won't be a pawn sacrifice, but is connected with the idea of a pawn sacrifice.
Rook to c1.
Rook c1, yes. Rook takes c1, knight c1. And in the long run, Botvinnik is planning to bring the king to c2 and then to move on forward after that. But black can play bishop a3, king d1, bishop takes, king takes, knight b3, king c2, knight a5. And I would tend to agree with Botvinnik. The bishop pair usually and should be worth a pawn. And he's actually going to show that in this game. Because we can say and see that these knights on a6 and a5 are not doing too much.
They're on the rim, so they're down.
Yeah, they're kind of dumb on those a6 and a5 squares. Also, knight c4 idea doesn't really work, because then white would just take and then just collect all the b pawns possible. King f7, e4. But the biggest problem for black is that this knight is completely out of play, and these bishops just keep them in check eternally.
It's dominating that.
Yes. And tragically for Bronstein, this is also one of the critical games where he should have held his own. So he tries his best. How can he try to build up a fortress? On which squares should we try to build a fortress with his pawns? It's a tough one, I know, but how can we try that? Well, he's okay with these pawns at the moment, Bronstein is, because these knights keep the king away from attacking these b pawns. But black's major concern are how to defend the kingside pawns from h7 to d5. So black needs to make a decision on which color he will position his pawns. Well, in general, black already has most of his pawns on white squares, so continuing that seems very logical. So he played f5, correct. So he's trying to build up a white square blockade. G takes f5, bishop d3. Well, who would exchange his favor in general in this position?
White, because you're opening the board.
Yeah.
It's better for bishops.
Normally white, because white has the bishop there. So naturally, Bronstein plays king g6 and tries to wait, hoping that white will run out of useful moves. Bishop d6, a very good move. Activating the bishop, also emphasizing how out of place this knight is on a6. Knight c6, bishop b1. But he's not in a rush, because black can't really do anything. Also, bishop b1 hints on a different idea. What is the potential idea of bishop b1?
Going to a2 and winning the d pawn.
Yes, going to a2 or even taking, and bishop a2. Let's say if black would play h5, white could already capture on d5 and play bishop a2. And if black loses that extra pawn, it's going to be over, because those knights are helpless against those bishops. So very soon we'll see that black is running out of moves. King f6, bishop g3. F takes e4. Black is kind of realizing that he will have to defend the d5 and f5 pawns simultaneously, but it somehow doesn't work. Because, for example, if black just tries to wait, h6, then white would play bishop f4. If the king would try to go back, it's the same deal. E takes, bishop a2, or maybe even bishop d6. And after knight e7, bishop d6, and black is in deep trouble. So Bronstein took, even though I'm sure he didn't want to, f takes e4, h6, bishop f4, h5. And how should white continue in this position? h4. E takes, h4. He took first, but h4 is the main idea of this position, because black needs to have fixed weaknesses. And as I learned it from my endgame studies, I know that if you want to win an endgame, your opponent at least needs to have two weaknesses. And we can clearly see not just two, but three weaknesses. These two pawns on d5 and h5, and also those terrible pawns on the b line. So knight b8, bishop g5 check, king f7, bishop f5. Botvinnik is not letting that b8 knight out. And now black is in trouble again, because bishop c8 is an idea, chasing the knight away. Also, the black king cannot move anymore, because if king g7, then bishop e6 and the d5 drops. And if the king would move anywhere else, even bishop g6 becomes an idea. So knight a7, which already looks very awkward, bishop f4, knight c6, bishop d3. A very good waiting move. Black is basically doomed to waiting, and he can't really do anything right now. Knight c8, bishop e2, king g6, bishop d3, bishop e2, bishop f3. So Botvinnik is slowly grinding away, and soon Bronstein is running out of moves. Knight e7, bishop g5, and Bronstein had enough, because suddenly those two knights are tangled and cannot move. Because if the knight moves, white just takes on d5, and otherwise, black is just out of moves. So Bronstein decided to give it a day, and with this game, Botvinnik equalized, and in the last game, Bronstein couldn't conjure up any play and lost the match to Botvinnik.
That's why he never got to the World
Yes,
Championship.
this was his last and only shot at the world title. So talking about drama, this game between Kasparov and Karpov was played in the last game, because Karpov won the previous game to this one and was a point ahead. So Kasparov had to face a task to win the game and retain the title. Otherwise, Karpov would have been the world champion in 1987. So Kasparov just took on c8, knight takes c8, and it's important to note that Karpov was in time trouble at this moment. And according to Kasparov, he was asked by the arbiter to sign and write the moves. So that's why he played the move he played in this position. But I'm asking you, what moves would you look for in this position for white? Because this was actually a very critical position that could have decided the fate of this match.
On a4 with queen to a1.
Queen a1 is an idea to emphasize this pin, but the knight would just move away to c5.
Oh, your knight's protected.
Yes, and also it's important to keep in mind that we're a pawn down. So white must take some action, otherwise he'll be a pawn down for nothing. Where are the black pieces mostly centered at? On the queen side. So naturally, we should try to look for some other ideas on the other side. If our opponent's pieces are on the queen side, we should look at ideas on the king side. How can we start bothering that lone king on g8? While also emphasizing that this a4 knight is a little bit out of place, just for the moment. What piece is missing from white's attack?
The bishop, right? So bishop to e4.
The bishop to e4 doesn't really do much apart from attacking the h7 square.
So you want more than that.
Yes? Bishop h5 is an idea,
But you just push the pawn.
but we'll just push the pawn. But we really need some support to actually break through.
So h4.
We don't need pawns in this attack this time. We actually need some heavy artillery to actually break through. How can we emphasize that the a4 knight is a bit misplaced while also hinting that we want to play around black's king side?
Queen to b5, attacking the knight,
Yes.
threatening to go to e8.
Yeah. Yes. So Kasparov played queen d1, which is good. Gave some chances for Karpov, but queen b5, according to engines and afterwards post-mortem analysis, showed that queen b5 is even stronger, according to the engine. Queen b5 is kind of hard to deal with, because let's say king h7, knight c6, and now we can see that the black queen already needs to go to a8. Queen d3 check, f5, queen d8, and we can see that black's position is pretty hopeless, because all of the white pieces are getting so close to the black king, it's going to be mate very soon. So after knight c5, queen e8 was an idea, hinting at bishop h5, bishop g6 stuff, and black is on the verge of losing. But Kasparov played queen d1, which is still a fine move. gave black the opportunity to play knight c5, which is actually a remarkable move, which works because queen d8, king h7 takes. There's a very nice resource here for black. Queen check, and that just takes the knight. And black would have been out of danger. But in time trouble, it's difficult to make calm moves like knight c5. Also, this could only be played if you realize that queen a1, queen e5 check is for certain playable. Otherwise, it would be a pretty bad move. But knight c5 was a saving move. But Karpov didn't see that. He played knight e7. So how should we continue here?
Check with queen.
Queen d8 check, of course. King h7. If check, then black will play f5. Yes, and that will not help our cause.
Oh, knight takes f7.
Yes, just knight takes f7, taking back the pawn. And now Kasparov has a beautiful pawn structure compared to Karpov's, and he will have good chances of converting. But it's still a task. Knight g6, queen e8, very, very good positional move. It's also hinting at the idea of bishop e4, so black has only one move here. You can tell that this queen on e8 is rather annoying, so black will need to do his best to get rid of that.
Queen e7.
Queen e7, yes. Because after queen takes a4, queen takes f7 is possible. Bishop e4, putting the bishop in the center, king g8, queen b5. Now, black is in trouble because the b6 pawn cannot really be defended because queen c7 would just drop the g6 knight. Knight f8, queen takes b6, queen f6, queen b5. Notice that Kasparov will start grinding slowly. He will not be in rush to prove the advantage. He knows that he's better and near winning, so he'll slowly grind away. Queen e7, king g2, g6. Maybe not the best because the pawns should stay on the black squares. So at least for a while, the bishop on e4 doesn't have a target. g6, queen a5. Black is kind of forced to wait. Queen g7, queen c5, queen f7, h4, h5. Now h5 maybe was a bigger problem than g6, because g6 at least gave some space for black. But h5 might be a little bit more premature. Queen c6, queen e7, bishop d3. So white is planning to plant the bishop in c4 and then to start pushing the e-pawn. e4, bishop c4, queen check first, asking where is the black king going. Queen d6, bishop b5. Also taking away some squares from the knight. King g8, bishop c6. e5 wouldn't be a bad move, but we don't want to allow moves like queen b7, even if they're not winning. So bishop c6, making sure there are no tricks around. Queen a7, queen b4, queen c7, queen b7. But Karpov doesn't want the endgame. e5. And now we can see that black's position is pretty much boxed in. The only thing white really needs to do is to get a little bit closer and he will be clinching the game. And the match. Queen a5, bishop e8. A splendid move, bringing the queen closer to the king. Queen c5, queen f7, king h8, bishop a4. And now basically the game is decided because the black queen is kind of stranded and we'll have to defend this knight on f8 eternally. Queen d5, check, king h2, queen c5, bishop b3, queen c8. And white only needs to take on g6 and the game will be over. Bishop d1, queen c5, king g2, and black resigned. Now, black could try queen d5, bishop f3, queen c5, bishop e4, queen b4, and now we must pay attention. Can we take on g6 at this moment? Does bishop takes g6 work? Obviously, black will need to take on g6. Queen takes g6. Should black resign in this position?
No, queen to g4.
If queen to g4, then white can start checking and running out. But isn't the black king out of moves? So there's this trick of queen b7, f3, boom, queen takes f3, and stalemate. So obviously, even in winning positions, it's important to keep your guard up. Queen b4, so white would play f3 first. And if queen b2, that will be the last check, because after king h3, queen b4, black is just going to lose slowly, because black will slowly run out of moves in this position. And after this, black is just lost. White can go just g4, or yeah, black will be slowly running out of moves of g4 and likes. So after king g2, Karpov resigned and Kasparov retained his title. A very good performance by Kasparov, winning a game that had to be won, otherwise he would have lost his title. So, talking about decisive and very important endgames, Carlsen Anand comes to mind. So this one was in the middle of the match and was pretty important for that World Championship match, as the score was even at this moment. Knight d7, bishop f4, takes. Well, if we take a look at this position, who would you say is better?
White, because he's got more space.
Yeah, white should be better because of more space and also because of other assets. What other assets? Yes. White does the bishop pair, so in general should be better. So the game continues with h4. Carlsen is trying to gain some more space, also hinting at ideas of attacking the g7 pawn. b6, h5, h6, castles, bishop b7, rook d3.
Kills me a castle behind them.
Yes.
With its half open fire.
Yes. So the rook is actually heading to g3, attacking the g7. c5, rook g3, rook g8, bishop d3. So Carlsen is in hurry and is immediately attacking Anand's position. But Anand is ready for this and patiently starts defending. Bishop e3, g6, h takes, knight takes g6. Now, Carlsen could take on g6, but that would lead to opposite colored bishops, and that would give big chances for black to hold. So obviously Carlsen is not interested. Rook h5, so he defends the e5 pawn. Bishop c6, bishop c2. So Carlsen is slowly, like the style of Botvinnik we saw earlier, slowly trying to grind away. King b7, rook g4, a5, bishop d1, defending all of his pieces. Bishop d1, rook d8, bishop c2, rook g8, and plays king d2. And now this could have been a turning point for the whole match, because now Anand has a great choice that he misses. It's black to move and change the whole evaluation, and maybe even chess history if he finds this move.
Knight takes pawn.
Yeah, knight takes pawn. And if rook takes,
Knight takes the other pawn, check.
king d3.
Bishop.
Now black will need to find one more precise move.
To win that rook.
Yes.
Oh, knight to b2.
Yes, knight b2 check here. And after rook takes g8, it would have been Anand on the top and pressing. He's up a pawn, and most likely Carlsen would have need to suffer in this position to try to hold, which is not entirely clear if possible. But knight takes e5 was missed by Anand, and in fact a4 was played almost immediately after Carlsen played king d2. A great save. Not really a great save, but a very lucky moment for Carlsen, because knight takes e5 would have been very dangerous.
Then it would be a GM if I pulled that off.
Yeah. Knight, king e2, but much to the credit to Carlsen, he still starts to play and continue with his grind even after such a setback of seeing this knight takes e5 idea and falling for that. King e2, a3, f3. Just making sure no more tricks are allowed. He bolsters this rook on g4 and defends his position with f3. Rook d8, king e1. Again, getting out of all tactical ideas. Rook d7, bishop c1. Just putting pressure on this a3 pawn, also hinting on the h6 one. Rook a8, king e2, patiently getting forward, moving forward with his pieces. Bishop a4, bishop e4 check. White is not interested in exchanging those beautiful bishops. Bishop takes g6, and only does when he wins a pawn. Rook takes g6, bishop a4, rook takes e6. But already white is winning a lot of pawns, so black is very close to losing. Bishop takes a3, rook a1, king e3, bishop c2, check. And black resigned because after, let's say, king a6, rook takes h6, black will be just too many pawns down. So this was a great example of how one move, one little slip could have changed everything. And I want to finish with one last Anand Carlsen game. Again, in this game, Carlsen is white. And this was an important game in their second match. Knight f6, castle, knight e4. And honestly, what would we expect Carlsen to play in this position? d4 or rook e1?
D4 is the...
Your first instinct was right, rook e1. We would expect Carlsen to play rook e1, but not in this game. Carlsen goes for the full point with the very principled d4 straight into the Berlin. Knight d6, takes, and we head into the Berlin defense that everybody loves. h3, bishop d7, knight c3, h6. And now Carlsen, as usual, chooses a harmonic way of developing his pieces. How can we develop our pieces in this position with white?
Rook to D1?
Rook d1 is one way of playing, but the other very classical way of playing these positions is b3, fianchettoing the bishop. King c8, bishop b2, c5, rook d1. Naturally, Carlsen's knight is headed to d5. b6, rook e1, just bringing his pieces closer to the center. Knight d5, g5. How can we stabilize this knight on d5?
C4.
c4, of course. King b7, king h2. Now, this king h2 move is a very crafty one from Carlsen. He's kind of getting ready of playing g4. Because if he would play g4 now, knight e7, king h2 would run into this idea of h5 at moments. King h2, therefore, and could run into h5 ideas at moments. Therefore, he plays king h2 immediately, so when he plays g4, he can already move his king to g3. a5, a4, stopping all funny business on the queen side. Knight e7, g4. So after knight g6, he can bring his king to g3 already. Bishop e7. And now Carlsen finds a plan to occupy the f6 square for his knight. How does he do that in this position? Naturally, this knight on d5 is fairly comfortable. So we'll need to find a way to position the other knight on f6.
Knight to d2.
Yes.
Heading to e4.
Yes. A great plan by Carlsen, which actually makes it harder for black to move in this game. Rook d8, knight e4, bishop f8, knight f6. And already Carlsen has a little bit of a grip on black's position. It's by all means playable for black, but that knight on f6 is very annoying. b5, an amazing tactical idea by Anand. His plan is, if white would take on b5, a4 would be played. So he played bishop c3, but if a takes b5, a4 is played, b takes, rook takes, and this rook would be majestic on this a line, also putting a lot of pressure on the white pawns. So bishop c3, trying to keep the position close. b takes, king c6, king f3, coming closer, kind of preparing f4 idea for later. Rook b8, king e4, rook b4. So Anand does deserve praise for his creative play in this game, and rook b4 is a magnificent idea. Bishop takes b4, and which pawn would we take normally?
D8.
d8, yes. And actually that would have been the good move. But Anand got carried away with his creative play. And actually in this position, black could even be better because there's a lot of pressure on these pawns on a4 and maybe soon on c4. So it would have been a full-fledged fight after a takes, but he took on c. He took with c. And now Carlsen finds the only way to create some play for white. f4 doesn't work at the moment because black would just take, and we wouldn't want to exchange off this beautiful knight on d5. So Carlsen finds a different plan.
Rook to f1. To go f4.
Rook f1.
Then f4.
But rook f1, f4, we'll still have to take with the d5 knight.
Right.
And that's what we really don't want to do.
And you lose your pawn on C.
Yeah. Knight h5, exactly. That's what Magnus played. He wants to take with a knight. So king b7, f4. And it's very admirable how he plays this position with such ambition. And that's very important to note. When we'll see how he will actually win this position with active play. G takes, knight takes f4, takes, bishop takes c4. But the point was to actually attack on the 7th rank and play rook d7.
By pushing that f pawn,
Yeah.
it opens up the center for his
Yes. So now the rooks are actually very useful in the center. Rook a6, knight d5, cutting the support of the f7 pawn, and that's kind of a bad news for Anand.
Oh, that's threatening the C pawn.
Yes. Rook c6. Otherwise, if he would have played bishop e6, one, that it would be very passive. The other one is that after takes, f takes, rook c1, black will be really passive and most likely will lose the game. Because after like rook c8, h4, the pawn will be very fast. So rook a6, knight d5, cutting off the support for the f7 pawn. Rook c6, rook takes f7, bishop c5, and now Carlsen to play and win. You can already have a feeling of something happening on the C line because there's way too many pieces just stranded there, like 4 of them. How could Carlsen use this fact to his benefit?
Looking for knight forks.
Now, the big defender in this position for black is the rook on c6. If we could remove that somehow, that would make our day much better. So that is why Carlsen took on c7.
He did do that. Okay.
Yes. Rook takes c7, knight takes c7, king c6, and Anand cannot afford to take on c7 because then the rook c1 idea suggested would work with full effect because everyone is pinned on the c line, and if you move the c4 bishop, I'll take on c5. If you play king b6, I take on c4, and this is a trivial win for white.
Wow.
So king c6, knight b5. Carlsen defends the knight. Also, if black would take on b5, that will just still hasten his inevitable loss. And after e6, b3, king d3, bishop e7, h4, a4, g5, those pawns are just too fast. And after h takes, a3, Carlsen is not afraid of ghosts, plays king c3. If b2, then just king c2 or b3, any of those. And these pawns are stopped, and the white pawns just promote. Therefore, after king c3, black resigned, and Carlsen retained his title by winning this Berlin Endgame.